My mother, Lucille Hendrix, had her first child when she was just 16 years old. It was 1942 in Seattle, Washington. My father, James, was stationed in Alabama, and my mother was all alone when it came to naming my brother. She decided on Johnny Allen Hendrix. She named him after my father, James Allen Hendrix, but everyone called him Al. When Johnny was born, Mama had to work odd hours just to feed herself, so she had to leave Johnny in the care of some friends while she found work. When my father came home from the war, he changed Johnny's name to James Marshall Hendrix. Everyone called him Jimmy after that. Mama came home, and I was born. My name is Leon, Jimi Hendrix's little brother. We lived modestly, and despite the lack of income, Jimmy and I were joined by Joseph and Kathy. My father sent Joseph away due to his health, and that's when my parents got divorced. Jimmy and I lived with our father, but he wasn't around much, so Jimmy took care of me most of the time. He was a very quiet kid, but he was spirited at the same time. Jimmy was most spirited about music. He would listen to Elvis Presley, Muddy Waters, and B.B. King for hours. Those were his favorites. He would tell me that he was going to play like that someday. He was hooked. Dad got Jimmy his first electric guitar when he was 16, and Jimmy hit the ground running. It was a right-handed guitar, but Jimmy was a lefty. He didn't care. Jimmy just flipped that guitar right around, restrung it, and played upside down. He joined a few small-time bands, but they didn't appreciate his impromptu solos and his show-off attitude. This was a new side of Jimmy that I had never seen before. Once he was on stage, he wasn't a shy kid anymore. He was a man who wanted his sound to be heard. His newfound confidence got him into some trouble, and he had to make the choice of joining the army or going to jail. So Jimmy joined the army and trained to become a paratrooper. Being in the army didn't stop him from playing his music. He made friends and played with them until he was honorably discharged. We were so happy that he didn't have to face combat. After the army, Jimmy found himself in New York playing with the Isley Brothers Band and recorded a few songs with the brothers until they moved on. He was too loud for them. He was then hired by Little Richard's band to play guitar. But just in my brother's style, he was fired for living on his own terms. He missed the bus. He continued to join bands and play their way for a while, but it was never enough for Jimmy. He wanted to play his own music. That is when he became the frontman of a band called Jimmy James and the Blue Flames. He was finally doing his own thing. The band was playing a gig at Cafe Wah in New York City when they got noticed by Chaz Chandler, a bassist for the Animals. Chad had convinced Jimmy to make the move to London, change his name to Jimi, and start a new band. Jimmy didn't even have time to tell us where he was going. One day he called me up and told me he was in London and that big things were going to happen. The next time I spoke to Jimmy was when he called to tell me that he had created a record with his new band, the Jimi Hendrix Experience. He had accomplished his dream of being a leader of his own band, but it wasn't until the Monterey Pop Festival that America really started paying attention to Jimi Hendrix. He set his guitar on fire that night, but what he really did was set fire to the music scene. Jimmy became known for his unique, rebellious, and raw style that people of the 60s were craving. We didn't see him at all, really. Jimmy was busy traveling the world and appearing on television. He even went on to headline at Woodstock and played a version of the Star-Spangled Banner for thousands of people to hear. Some people may have only seen a wild rock star that burned guitars and played loud, distorted riffs, but to me, he was a brother and a guardian who worked hard for what he believed in. And although his time on earth was short, he managed to become the best guitar player in history.